So it's different for me to be on a webinar. I like to connect in person, but hopefully we'll be able to connect through questions. Again, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, I can see the chat box going here, so I'll try to address your question as soon as possible. If not, Jesse's also going to be in the other room looking at questions as well, and we'll make sure that anything is answered at the very end. So before I begin, I just wanted to gratefully acknowledge the traditional territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations for hosting us here today. I am originally from Ontario, and it's an honor to be living on this territory out here, working, living, and playing. So today I am going to be talking to you about one of the awesome resources that we have called Aboriginal Communities Active for Life, which is really about helping participants develop physical literacy, which I'm going to get into, and really promoting healthy lifestyles. So I'm sure some of you are running different programs in your communities, whether that's the run walk or around physical activity, healthy eating, healthy pregnancies. So hopefully you'll be able to take something out of this webinar that applies to your own programs. I'll try to use lots of different examples, but if anyone has any stories that they would like to share as well, feel free to type them in the chat box. So you won't be able to use your microphone, but I'll be able to share them for you if that's okay. It's just nice to know what everyone's doing kind of in their own regions because I know everyone is all over BC. Okay, so let me see here, advancing to the next slide. Okay, so not sure if you can see that next slide, but it's a little bit just more about who I am. So again, Emily Rand, on my father's side, he is Swedish and Estonian, so I have some roots there. On my mother's side, Scottish, Irish, English, just a bit of a mix. I was raised in Keene, Ontario, which is just between Toronto and Ottawa, and I've now been living in Victoria for about 5 years on and off. My heart is definitely in both places in Ontario and BC, so it's nice to be able to go back and visit, but also explore beautiful BC out here. Just some fun facts about me. Those pictures there represent all the things that are really important to me in my life. So I've got my little fur babies, my dog Harley and my cat Mowgli. They're cuddling. At the bottom, that family shot, that is my sister Michelle taking our group family photo, which we always laugh at because I know Michelle Webster is also a selfie master, and so it must be in the name because my sister loves taking the group selfies as well. And that was us on a family trip to Haida Gwaii last summer, which was really special for us. We had never been there. And so that's my sister, my parents, and then my sister's husband and my partner there as well. So that was a really good time. So we like to travel a lot. And the other picture there is just a beautiful hike around Victoria. I like to be outdoors as much as possible. I'd say growing up, I did lots of different sports and activities. And now it's really about being outside as much as possible with friends, with family. So that's a little bit more about who I am. I would love to know who I have on the line here, but if you want to type in any fun facts about yourself, that would be great. And so I work for a national nonprofit organization called Sport for Life. And our mission really is to improve the quality of sport and physical activity and help people be as active as possible, whether that is through sport, maybe a high performance level, or just everyday active. So we develop tools, trainings, resources to help support community leaders such as yourself, as well as coaches, sport organizations, really around, making sure everyone's speaking the same language about what is quality sport and what does good physical activity look like. So that's a bit more of what I'm going to be talking to you today about. At the national level, we work with the Aboriginal Sports Circle, which is an organization that really represents the voices of Indigenous people across Canada in their physical activity, sport, and recreation pursuits. And then within each province and territory, there is an Indigenous sport body that we work with. So here in BC, that would be ISPARC, and we really work closely with ISPARC here, which is great, going to a lot of the leader trainings, Fit Nation, delivering workshops and presentations. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what the work we do. And so all of the resources and trainings that we have with Indigenous communities is really in collaboration we've developed with the Aboriginal Sports Circle. And I see some questions coming in. So is the Active for Life available online? Yes, it is. And I have that slide at the end. So once you've gone through all this, you'll get to see where the link is, where you can get your own copy of this resource. Everyone see that okay? Sorry, I'm getting a bit used to where the camera is as well. And I see some information coming in about where people are. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so quickly, just what is the outline for today's webinar? Really going to be focusing on this workshop, this resource. And then within this resource, what it's really about is how to create quality experiences within your programs. What is physical literacy and quality sport? What is your program vision? And then sharing some resources at the end. So some of you might have already seen a very similar presentation at the leader training, or maybe you've attended the workshop already. But if you have, hopefully this just serves as a reminder. Sorry, I realized I was looking over here, but I should be looking right there. Hopefully this serves as a refresher for the information that you already had learned, and maybe just to check in to see how you're doing within your programs. And if you haven't seen it before, hopefully this provides you with a bit of new knowledge and some tools and ideas of that you can take away for your own programs. So the purpose of this resource is really to help participants who are reading the resource or taking the workshop to understand what physical literacy is and how to create quality experiences in the programs. It really provides tools, resources, and action plans to further support delivery of quality sport and physical activity programs within your communities. Within the resource, we also cover the holistic model, and that's done through an activity in the workshop. And there's also more information in there. And it really is designed to give you more ideas on how to support not only your participants' physical and mental needs, but also the cultural and spiritual as well. And just briefly, the work that we do with the Aboriginal Sports Circle and the Indigenous sport bodies across Canada really come from the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, those 5 of them there on the screen that are really around sport and physical activity. I won't go through them all. We do have them listed in more detail within the resource, so you can look at them there. But just so everyone understands kind of where we're coming from and that our work is guided through these calls to action specifically. Okay, so I'm going to try and incorporate some activities throughout this webinar. I know it's a bit difficult because you just see me, I can't see you. I don't know what you're doing or if you're going to be engaging in the activities that I have here, but as we go through, just some things to think about, some activities to do. So the first one that I just want you to think about is, I have it on the screen there, reflect on a program that you've been a participant in and a good leader that you had. So we'll let you take a second to think about that. So a program that you have participated in where you had a really good leader who maybe made it that really good program. Okay, so maybe you've had a bit of time to reflect on that now. Now what I'd like you to do is, if possible, just type in the chat box some qualities of that good leader. So what were the things that really made that person a good leader? I see some people typing in here. Fun. Yeah. Dedicated. Other ones here. Friendly, caring, engaging. Awesome. Organized, that's a good one. And prepared, yeah, I see those. Listens to the needs, really knows who their participants are. Often we've got big groups, but how can you connect with each individual participant so you know what their individual needs are? Consistent, that's good. So you've got a plan, you're doing things with purpose, you're keeping it consistent, understands the participants. Awesome. Those are really good answers. So within this resource and the workshop, we really kind of go deeper into those qualities. And because what we're hoping at the end of the day is that you really come away with some ideas, some other ideas. I'm sure lots of you are already have a lot of these qualities within your programs that you demonstrate to your leaders, but really kind of thinking more about, are there any that I might be missing? Are there any that I could work on? Because at the end of the day, your participants will have a good experience in the program if they have a good leader. So some of the other ones, I'm just going to show you here. Let's see if they match up. This is the list that we have within the resource. So what makes a good leader? When a leader treats participants with respect, when they encourage the group, is a positive role model, getting clear, consistent communication from leaders, knows a lot about the sport or activity or whatever program they're leading, someone who allows participants to make mistakes while still staying positive. That's a big one. A leader who listens and considers participants' opinions. So maybe not always telling people what to do, but actually saying, hey, what do you want to do within this program? And considering different ideas. A leader who you can talk to easily, someone who's nice and friendly. At the end of the day, I'd say that's the most important. If you're nice, friendly, and open, chances are that your participants are going to feel that and they're going to want to connect with you and they'll have a good experience. Getting compliments from leaders. When a leader participates with participants during activities, I think that's a really good one too. So not just always standing on the sidelines telling your participants what to do, but actually engaging with them so that they know that that's important to you as well. And a leader who jokes around. I know lots of us like to have fun, so that's important to keep it light and humorous within your programs. So now that we have an idea, more of an idea of what a good leader looks like, now I'm going to move into what are those kind of 5 principles or ideas that really create quality experiences in activity programs. So those 5 would be making your programs fun, making them with purpose and consistency, which someone highlighted earlier, making sure that everyone is included and participant-centered, making sure that your participants are always moving, and having activities within your programs that are progressive and challenging. So you're kind of pushing your participants to become better. So now we're going to look at each one of those a bit more. So if we come back to the chat box, oh, I see someone's already chatting away there or typing away. So another question here, what does fun look like in your programs? So what makes a program fun? What are some of those ideas? Laughter, yep. Interactive. Sense of community, that's a great one. See some more coming in here. Things they like to do and in different ways, great. So really making it participant-centered. Smiles work too. Yeah, that's fun. Obstacles, relays, music, great. I'm not going to ask you to answer this question in the chat box, but just think, do any of you play music when you're running your programs? Think of how great that might be for your participants to all of a sudden have music in there where a lot of people are like, oh yeah, we're moving around, we're doing this and that, and now we've got some music playing. That can really make it fun for people. I'll share a little story here. I recently started as a coach for Special Olympics, which is really working with athletes with intellectual disabilities. And I noticed that one girl or one athlete at the beginning of every practice that we were doing, she would just be, before we had started, she'd be sitting on the side just listening to her music. Noticed a couple of other athletes were also, they had their headphones in listening to music. And then I thought, it would be great if we actually started to play music out loud for everyone as we did our warm up and then kind of quietly in the background as we did our program. So I brought in my speaker the following week and it was great. Everyone was super into it and it was a nice way to kind of bring up the atmosphere and make everyone feel like, hey, this is a bit more fun. Let's see. Yes, and sometimes they have to sing the songs too. That's great. Let's go back here. Challenging. Yeah, so fun for some people is having activities that are challenging. They are pushing themselves, they're learning. Also, competition can be fun for some people. We're kind of at that, day and age where we say, no, no competition, like we don't want anyone to feel bad about losing. But for some people, they thrive on competition. So maybe within your programs, it's thinking about, okay, well, how can I bring in some competitive aspects where there's not necessarily winners and losers, but maybe it's people competing against themselves or thinking of different ways to bring in that competition, that friendly competition, in a way that makes it fun for those who really enjoy that. All right, I'm just going to look at my list here, see if we missed anything. So we had music, laughing, games, competition, friends, so that sense of community, having others around you, that can be fun. Another thing that can make programs fun is safety. So people might not or participants might not necessarily think that a safe environment is fun, but as soon as people aren't safe, then that's no longer fun. So just thinking about, okay, are my participants, are we in a physically safe space? There's no hazards or anything around, and also an emotionally safe space as well. So making sure that there's no bullying or anything like that. And then another one that I have, okay, everyone can still hear me here. Okay. And then the other one I have is food. So maybe there's an opportunity to bring in food to your programs because food for a lot of us is fun. I know I love eating. I love trying different foods. And especially if you're running an active program, that's a great way to make sure that your participants are fueled on good food. So for example, bringing in some veggies or some fruits so that, they're fueled to perform, but it's also a fun little aspect as well. The other thing I would say, let me see if I have it on the next slide. Yeah, is that we're just going to look at here this list on the next slide of there was some research done around what makes programs fun, and here were the top 11 research findings. So the first one is being a good sport. Second one is trying hard, positive coaching, learning and improving, so making sure you're feeling challenged. Game time support, so being congratulated for playing well and having other people cheer you on. That can be really fun for people. Games, another point within there is getting playing time and playing against an evenly matched team. So, if it is a sport, that there's even teams, so not one team is winning way more than the other. Practices, so having well-organized practices with lots of different individual, partner, and group activities. That's a good point there. Team friendships, mental bonuses, so really keeping a positive attitude and relieving stress. That is fun for people. They come to your program and all the worries of their day or their work, if you're working with adults or for kids, maybe it's a safe environment that they can come to. Just being able to be there in a safe environment is really fun for them. Team rituals, so having a team cheer, high-fiving, and going out to eat together. And then the last one, which I think all of us always appreciate, is that swag. And I know Michelle Webster loves her swag. She's always repping her iSpark gear. And so that really looks at, a special or cool uniform, having nice equipment, and earning medals or trophies. So those things can make it fun for participants as well. So just think as you, oh, let's see here. I think Lena might be having a bit of a, I am on the fun slide right now, just so you know. I'm just seeing that some people might not be able to hear me or might not know what slide I'm on. Yeah, so within your programs, just really maybe thinking about, are there any other ways that I can make my programs more fun? If I'm doing any of these already, if there's any ways I can enhance it, just a good kind of point to check in. Okay, so the other way to really create quality experiences within your programs is to develop your programs with purpose. It kind of gets back to that idea that that person brought up around making sure your programs are consistent and really well organized. So within your programs, thinking of, what is the goal of my program? What do I want my participants to come away with? Maybe what do I want them to come away with after each individual session? Or, if it's a 6-week program, at the end of the 6 weeks, what do I want them to get out of it? So within this resource, there is a good story that goes along with purpose. So I'm going to read it to you now. So just to let you know, the resource is based on kind of what we heard through our engagement sessions with over 260 leaders across Canada, many of whom are Indigenous. And so we created a fictional character, Taylor, and this book, interactive book, I would say, is all about Taylor and Taylor's experiences in sport and physical activity, and the people that Taylor has met along the way in her journey. So this story specifically is about Taylor's friend Joe. So I'm going to read the story that goes along with purpose. So my friend Joe is a soccer coach. When he designs his practices, he always begins with movement preparation drills as a warm-up. These are simple exercises that, when done properly and regularly, wakes up the energy systems and helps to reduce injuries during practices and games. At the same time, they also help athletes to perform better by training some simple movement patterns and increasing balance. Since he introduced the preparation drills, his players have had far fewer injuries. The drills focus on carefully selected activities, technique, and gradual progression of time, space, and pressure. There are a lot of repetitions, and the drills are led by a trained coach who keeps it fun and interesting. I know it's important to get my players moving, but I know it's also important to move the right way. Now, when I plan my practices and warm-up sessions, I take a few moments to think about what I want the participants to learn and practice. I try to choose the games and activities that will benefit them the most. I also try to plan my sport practices and activity programs with a clear purpose. For example, am I trying to improve the participants' skills in a certain movement, or am I trying to improve their fitness? Those are two different things. Maybe I want them to work better as a team or develop their strategy or problem-solving skills. Sometimes I might just want them to move and have fun. By planning activities with a purpose, I can create a better experience for the participants. So Joe's story might resonate with a few of you, but just really to the point that, as you start to plan out your programs, or, if your programs are already running along, checking in to see, am I doing things with purpose? Or am I just running them here, there, my session, I'm just running a session for the sake of running a session. There's no real outcome or goal associated with it. But it's nice to have a purpose and also to let your participants know what that purpose is. So at the beginning of each session, you might want to say, so today, here's what I want you to walk away with at the end of the program. I want you to have some fun. I want you to meet new people. And I want you to work on, say, your running skills. Also, if you're running, say, a 6-week program, at the very beginning of the program, let participants know what you're hoping that they can get out of it after the 6 weeks. And also checking in with them to see maybe what they want to get out of it so that you know what kind of their purpose is for being there as well. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So now we've talked about creating programs that are fun and done with purpose. I see someone's typing. Okay, well, if you have any questions, again, I'll keep checking here to see if any pop up. Okay, so the next one that we want to look at is within your programs, making sure that everyone feels included and that your activities are participant-centered. Here are some questions to kind of think about. So I won't ask you to chat or to type in the chat box, but just some things to reflect on. So what does everyone included and participant-centered mean to you? How can we ensure that everyone can participate to the level of their abilities? How can we include participants with disabilities, whether that's physical or intellectual? How can we include participants with lower skill levels, with lower skill and interest? And how can we help them develop their skills? One thing that I really like to think of when I'm thinking about making sure that everyone is included within my programs is, again, knowing each individual participant, because when you know each participant as an individual, you can make sure that your activities are centered on what their interests are, and you know different ways to make them feel included. The thing that we really talk about in this workshop is pairing participants. I know a lot of us like to just say, if we're running an activity, we give the instructions and then we say, okay, go find a partner. And for a lot of people, that can be really intimidating, especially if they're more introverted or shy, and it is difficult for them to go meet someone new, especially if it's early on in a program where they don't know anyone. So what I encourage you to do within your programs is really to think about different ways that you can match people without having them to find other partners. One thing that we like to do is we use these Annie Moves cards. So there's about 20 different animals, and there's a pair for every animal. So there you can see there's an eagle. We got fish, 2 fish there. Got wolves. So what we would do is we would just go around, give everyone a different card, and then ask people to match up with their animal. Another fun thing that you might want to do with this is if you give everyone their card and then tell them not to look at it, and then everyone stands in a circle and they put their card on their head, and then they have to go and try and find their matching animal with just using some simple yes or no questions. So you can't ask what am I, but you can ask characteristics about what you are. Or the other thing that you could do is have participants look at the card, not show anyone else, but then they have to make that animal noise or movement around while the other people are making theirs as well, and try to find their matching partner. Another simple thing that you can do for grouping is just giving people different, as you go around and either kind of number them off, giving them different, say, animal names or different types of food. So banana, apple, orange, banana, apple, orange. And then all the bananas get together, all the apples get together, all the oranges get together. And then you have different groups that way. So that's just one way that, when we think of making sure that everyone feels included, is kind of thinking about, okay, how am I matching people within activities as well? And then just going back to these questions here. So if you do have participants with disabilities, do they feel included? Do they have options for different activities that they could be doing that really meets their level of ability and where they are at? And then again, if you have participants with lower skill and interests, are you offering lots of different options that kind of meet them with where they are at? Any questions around that? So again, after today, maybe you can just kind of reflect and think, am I making sure that everyone feels included within my programs, and that the activities are participant-centered, that the participants actually enjoy what they're doing, and they have a say in what they're doing. Okay, so the next one that we're going to look at is always moving. So ideally within our programs, the goal there is to have participants moving 80% of the time and more inactive 20% of the time. So, if you had a 60-minute program, that would be 40 minutes of moving and 20 minutes of, standing around. So that might be while you're saying instructions, or maybe while they're getting water, those things. But ideally, keeping participants moving as much as possible. I have, it says football example there. So I was out walking my dog Harley the other night, and we live right near an elementary school. And as I was walking by the elementary school, they were having a football practice. I would say the kids were probably in grade 8, maybe, pretty young. But it was all males leading the football practice, and I could hear the coaches yelling at the kids like, "Hey, pay attention!" They were all standing in a group together, and the coaches were giving instructions on what they were going to be doing. But they were probably talking for 5 to 10 minutes, and they were yelling at the kids who were acting up. They were saying, "Hey, pay attention!" And then they had kids behind them who, were fooling around over there and doing different things. And it really dawned on me with this principle of keeping participants moving is that the kids were probably standing around for too long and they lost interest. The coaches were giving really long instructions, and especially with kids, we know, and even with adults, with ourselves, we know that we can only take so much information in at once. So if you have your participants standing there listening to you for 10 minutes, they're probably checked out. And with kids, that's when the behavioral things start to happen. So thinking about, some of the ways within your programs to make sure that your participants are always moving. That also helps them to have more time to develop different skills and to really work on the things that you want to be working on within your program. So I have there just thinking of different ways to keep participants moving in your program. Another thing that we tend to do, in addition to giving long, really detailed instructions, so we want to keep our instructions brief, we can also use stations. So people can move from station to station and they're doing activities at different stations. That way they're always moving. Sometimes we also tend to overuse lineups too long. So one person goes at a time and then the next person, while at the back of the line, everyone is just standing around. Ways around this are to have multiple lines going at once, so there's fewer people within the line. Or if you do want to be able to see one participant go at a time, which sometimes we need to do to make sure that we're giving good feedback on their movements, think of different ways that you can keep your participants moving in the back. So maybe they could be doing jumping jacks or maybe squats or maybe different activities so that they continue to move while you are giving that individualized instruction to one person who's going at a time. Another thing that you might want to consider ways to keep your participants moving is planning a few extra activities. Sometimes we think an activity is going to take a really long time and then it ends up taking 5 minutes and then we don't know what to do. So making sure, and this comes back to making sure that your practices and your programs are organized, just making sure that you have some extra activities in your back pocket in case you do end early that you can do with your participants. And then another thing you might actually want to do is time your practice. So if you have a 8 or a 1 hour session, maybe you have a friend come time you for the first session just to get an understanding of how much your participants are actually moving and how much they're standing around. So then after that, you kind of have a baseline understanding of, the active versus inactive time and can work to change it from there. Okay. So the next one we have here is progressive and challenging, which has already come up before, which is awesome. But just another thing to consider within your programs is making sure that your activities are progressive and challenging so that you are helping your participants to improve. So we have a little graph there, which we call the challenge zone. And really it just shows kind of that area within people feel good enough that they're challenged and that, they are learning new things, but it's not so easy that they're bored and they're not engaged, or it's not so hard that they're anxious, they're frustrated, they're continuing to fail. So, within your programs, really thinking of for each individual participant, what is their challenge zone? How can you work within their challenge zone to make sure that they are learning, that they're not finding things too easy, that they're disengaged, at the same time that they're not feeling so frustrated because they keep failing because they can't actually do the activity. So on the slide there, we also have, it's really about getting to know your group and each individual participant, being aware of their behavior. And what you want to aim for is happiness and low stress and avoid high stress, anxiety, and boredom. So I think everyone's probably, I don't know if everyone's sitting at home right now. Oh yes, Jessie just came in and I forgot that she's going to help me with this next activity. So we've actually now been sitting for a little while if we are all sitting at home. So I encourage you to get up out of your chairs. We're going to do a little balance activity, which really demonstrates this idea of progressive and challenging. Okay, so what I want you to do, here we go. So you can either you can stand, or if you want, you can stay seated, and I'm going to give you the seated option after. But if you want to stand, what I want you to do, just hands on your hips or hands to your side, I want you to just stand on one foot. There you go. Try and balance on one foot. Some of you might be falling over. Some of you might be like, oh, this is super easy. I don't know because I can't see you. But what we're going to do now is we're going to change feet. All right, so I want you to go onto your other foot. And many of you probably started on your dominant or your good foot, so this one might be a bit different, or you might actually now be on your better foot. Just see the difference there. Okay, now what I want you to do, I want you to go back to that first foot. I want you to hold it up, and I want you to close your eyes. Feel my legs shake. Some of you, again, might be falling over. Some of you might be cool as a cucumber. Okay, now I want you to do that on the other foot. So other foot there, closing your eyes. That's definitely not my better foot. And down. Some of you might want to go back to that first option if you're like, okay, I really need to work on my balance. That's something I've neglected. For those of you who feel good doing both of those options, can now go to another option of going back to that first foot, closing your eyes, and then putting, it's hard for me to talk and do this too, putting your nose or your finger on your nose. Jesse's just laughing at me in the background. Okay, and now I want you to do that on your other foot. So this might be the most challenging of all because you're on your non-dominant foot, balancing, your eyes are closed, and finger to nose. There. Thank you, Jessie. She's holding the camera in a different angle there. Hopefully everyone had a bit of fun there and got moving a bit. But that just really shows some of the different options of ways that we can make it progressive or more challenging. So if we're working with older adults or someone with mobility issues, it might be best just to start with the first option. Other things we can do, go by a wall. So we can do that on one foot. We could close our eyes. We can do all those progressions. You could hold on to a friend. You could also sit down, so I actually won't sit in the chair, but if a participant wanted to stay seated, they can sit in the chair and they can lift one leg up at a time, and then the other leg up at a time, or the other leg up, and then maybe both legs up, and then doing it again, but with eyes closed. So one leg, the other leg, both leg, and then again bringing in that as well. So that's a bit of the coordination piece too. So what I would just encourage you to do within your programs is think of, with the activities that you're running, what are the different modifications or the different options that I could provide around each activity? That way, people are going to find their own ways to make it progressive and challenging for themselves. You're also making sure that people feel included and that your activities are participant-centered because people have options. And it also makes it fun because then people, really get to choose what they want to do, and they've got a variety of different activities to be doing. The other thing I would say with that is sometimes when we give different options, we say, this is the easiest, this is, medium, this is really hard. I actually like to avoid that because some people who are super competitive with themselves and always want to do the hardest option, even though it might not be developmentally appropriate for what their skill level is, I just say, here's one option, here's another option, here's another option. You pick which option works best for you. That way, it takes out any of that pressure for people to be like, oh, I really need to do the hardest because, I always want to push myself. And at the same time, if someone has a mobility issue or a disability and they want to choose, maybe one of the first options, you're not saying this is the easiest, so this is what you should be doing. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? Just going to grab some water here. So at this point, now that we've covered those 5 principles, and within this communities workshop, we really go through more of those in detail. But at this point, I just want you to kind of take a second to reflect on how would you apply these 5 ideas of fun with purpose, everyone included and participant-centered, always moving, progressive and challenging in your program. I'm sure some of you or most of you are already doing some or if not all of those really well, but maybe there's areas where you could just reflect and say, hey, I think I could change that a bit, or maybe this is something that I want to work on as a leader. So ideally, kids are exposed to good programs that, incorporate those 5 principles at an early age. If they aren't at a young age, that's okay. Adults still might, might not be active in their childhood, but want to pick up activities later on in life. And providing quality experiences within those programs is just as important. But ideally, what we want to be doing is really working with our children and youth so that they're exposed to these really good programs at a young age. And it works something like this. We say life is an active event. When we provide opportunities for our children to move and play from early ages, they gain movement skills. As our kids practice movement skills, they gain the confidence to do those movements in different situations. Fundamental movement skills like running, wheeling, jumping, throwing, catching, and many more are the building blocks to all movements. The more movements they can do, the more activities are available for them to take part in. As our kids do different movements and activities, they gain the confidence to participate in those activities. And if they have fun, positive experiences, they will be motivated to keep coming back and to try more activities. So really exposing our children and youth to as many different movement skills as possible, because that's going to help develop their confidence in those movements and their motivation to be doing those movements, which also transfers into feeling motivated to try different movements. Almost in a circle. And that is what we call physical literacy. So physical literacy really is the development of movement skills, confidence to participate, and motivation and enjoyment to be active for life. So physical literacy, sometimes people think just physical activity, but it's more than just, being active and developing movement skills. It's also helping our participants develop their confidence and their motivation and enjoyment, because without both of those, the chances of continuing to be an activity might be less. So not just focusing on the physical, but also the mental and the emotional pieces as well. I have a physical literacy video here, but I'm not going to run it. Jesse will be sending this presentation out as a PDF after, and so you can check that YouTube link out on your own time, and really it's just a 3-minute clip on more information on what physical literacy is, and it's just a good summary. Okay, so how do we develop our participants' movement skills? And what are those movement skills? So there's 3 different types of movement skills. The first one are functional movement skills. Functional movement skills are really those, movements that help us function in everyday life. Sitting down on a chair, reaching up to get things out of the cupboard, walking the dog, things like that. Those are functional movement skills. Fundamental movement skills are the very basics, including running, jumping, throwing, kicking, striking, and many more, wheeling as well, that are the building blocks to then other movements. And then our last one there are fundamental sports skills. So those are skills that are specific to sports. So for example, playing hockey, that would be stick handling, or basketball, dribbling. So those skills are a bit more sport specific. And we really can help to develop movement skills by providing opportunities for movement. So if someone is not moving within a program where we're trying to work on these skills, then they will not be developing their movement skills. However, if you're keeping your participants moving and engaging in lots of different activities, then they will have the opportunity to develop different skills. By making sure that our programs are progressive and challenging, so what we already talked about before, that helps to develop movement skills, along with making sure that our programs are fun. Another big way to develop movement skills is to make sure that they are developmentally appropriate. So I mentioned that before, and that really looks at, if you're working with children and youth, making sure that the activities that they're doing are appropriate for the developmental stage that they are at. So we wouldn't expect them to be doing something that adults can do because physically and mentally they are not there yet within their developmental growth. So making sure that the activities are really developmentally appropriate for the audience that you're working with. And then the other ways that we develop movement skills are making sure that our programs, again, are done with purpose, which we already covered. Here's just a little graphic that shows the different types of movement skills that are out there. And if you have these basic movement or these fundamental movement skills, all the different activities or sports that you might be able to engage in and enjoy it because you have those fundamental movement skills. So for example, if you can run, you might enjoy baseball, hunting, lacrosse, soccer, track and field. If you can jump, you might enjoy blanket toss, gathering, high kick, track and field, and volleyball. And if you can balance, you might enjoy archery, jigging, hockey, snowboard, and yoga. And then I missed throw in there. So if you can throw, you might enjoy basketball, fishing, hunting, snow snake, which is a traditional Arctic game, and softball. So again, just showing you having as many different building blocks as possible will allow our participants and ourselves to then participate in a wide variety of activities. So if I only focus on, jumping growing up, then I might miss out on all these other opportunities. And say I were to ever be injured, and that affected my jumping, then that might affect the different activities that I would be able to engage in as well. The other thing with physical literacy, so that development of movement skills, confidence, motivation, that we want to think of, is really developing those principles of movement, skills, confidence, and motivation in different environments. So not always just doing things on the ground, but also in the water. We live in Canada. There's lots of water around, especially in BC and on the coast. We've got the ocean, we've got lots of lakes. So developing skills in the water so that people feel comfortable and confident there, as well as ice and snow, again in Canada, especially if we're in the north or the interior, not so much in Victoria, but sometimes we do get it in the winter. And this is a great point I think a lot of us can relate to is with older adults or elders, when it's winter and everyone stays inside because they don't want to fall on the ice or snow, and that's because they're not used to being out there. So making sure, from a young age that we're exposing our kids to these different environments so that, as they get older, they will feel comfortable and confident and have the skills to be able to maneuver in different environments. And the last one would be air. And that would be a bit more relevant for, say, people who do gymnastics or, skydiving, so kind of confident moving in the air. Okay, so how do we develop people's confidence? Well, again, these are the ideas we've already covered when we talked about those 5 different principles. So making sure that our participants feel included, that is going to help build their confidence. As soon as we feel excluded, our confidence goes way down. Making sure that there is an appropriate success to failure rate. What does that mean? Well, that means that, within our programs that, again, finding that challenge zone for each participant so that they're not always succeeding at an activity, but they're also not failing all the time as well. If they're failing all the time, we of course know that their confidence is going to go down. But if they're succeeding all the time, their confidence can go way up, and then they might get into a situation maybe in another activity where they don't succeed all the time, and then they don't know how to handle failure because they haven't experienced it before. And then that really might drop their confidence. So again, within our programs, just making sure we're finding that balance of success to failure within the activities. Can also help build our participants' confidence by appreciating their abilities. So again, that encouragement, that support, that positive feedback to help build their confidence, and really just overall creating a supportive environment. All right, and how do we help to build our participants' motivation and enjoyment? Well, by creating our programs, making sure that they're fun, social, and done with purpose. A lot of us are motivated to come back to a program and enjoy a program if we're having fun, if there's a social aspect, and if they're done with purpose. If we feel like there's goals within that and we're helping or reaching our goals. We can also help to develop motivation by creating that desire to act. So really finding out, within our participants, why are you here? What do you hope to get out of this program? So that really creates that desire. And also, we are more motivated to do an activity and enjoy an activity when we know what to do. So having the knowledge around the certain skill that we're doing. If I go into a new program, so for example, if I go into a gymnastics program and I've never done gymnastics before, and the leader doesn't give me any information on what I should be doing, then my motivation and my enjoyment might really go down. And then also the valuing piece there, so I know why I should be doing it. When we're kids, we engage in a lot of physical activities and maybe sport because it's just fun. It's just what we do with our friends. It's a good time. And that's why we really value it. But as we get older, our reasons for participating in different activities and being active in our everyday life might change. It might be more because we know about the health consequences with being inactive. So, some of those chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, cancer. And so maybe we're more motivated to be active because we value our health and we value living a long life. And so that's why we continue to be active. So really within your programs, understanding your participants' values and what brings them there, because if you know that, then you can ensure that you're including that within your program so that they're motivated and enjoy participating. And this slide really just shows that physical literacy is a lifespan approach. So we don't just develop physical literacy and then we're done. And so I have that quote there, we cannot teach physical literacy, but instead create the environment to help others develop it. So it's not like, I develop movement skills, my confidence and my motivation and enjoyment, and then I'm physically literate. It changes throughout our life. An example that I like to share is I bike ride to work. So I would call myself just a commuter biker. Sometimes I go on like long bike rides, but usually it's just short ones. But one time I was going up a hill, stopped at a stoplight, and knew it was going to be a challenge to try and get going again. And of course, as I tried to get going, I fell off my bike. I was very embarrassed and a bit injured, and truthfully did not want to be on my bike much after that. My confidence had gone down, my motivation and my enjoyment had gone down, and in my mind, my skill in biking had gone down as well. So I took a break from my bike for about a week or two, but I really value biking and I value the benefits that biking has, especially biking to work and the environmental impacts around that as well. So I said, you know what, I need to get back on my bike. And so I did, and it's been good ever since, haven't fallen off again. But that kind of just shows that my kind of literacy within that skill specifically had changed, right? So, I felt fairly confident in it, and then that incident happened, changed, but then it got good again. So life is like that, right? Ups and downs, and I'm sure many of you can relate to different activities that you've done, or maybe you picked up a new activity later on in life, and that you didn't do when you were younger, and so your confidence, your motivation, and enjoyment, and your skills around that might have changed. So really just thinking that physical literacy, again, lifespan approach, we don't just learn it and then it's done. It's constantly evolving, and it's never too late to, work on these different areas of skills, confidence, and motivation and enjoyment. And within our programs, really creating that environment, so looking at those 5 principles we talked about at the beginning, can help our participants develop their physical literacy. Okay, so I'm just going to switch gears quickly here, and I'm not going to cover this slide all that much because when I do deliver this workshop, it's usually with my um, with a co-facilitator who is Indigenous and brings a lot more relevant stories to this activity. But this just shows the holistic model. So within our programs, again, I think I mentioned at the beginning, not always just focusing on our participants' physical and mental needs, but also their cultural and spiritual needs as well. So in the resource, we have this graphic, and there's stories within each of those 4 areas that really relate to everyday life and how, focusing on those different needs. And within the workshop, we give people the opportunity to think about, how would you, so they would do an activity, and then how would you incorporate holistic practices within your program. The other thing that we cover in this resource and the workshop is quality sport, and really it should say quality sport and physical activity because these concepts here really apply to both. So when we talk about, getting participants into sport or an activity program, it's not about getting them into any program, it's about a quality program. So that's something that we really promote at Sport for Life. And so here we just show that good programs really are developmentally appropriate, participant-centered, progressive and challenging, planned, and competition is meaningful. So again, there's even matching between participants or teams. Quality sport also, it really is about good people leading well-run programs. And these good people include coaches and officials, leaders, parents, partners, teachers, lots of different community members. But really, they are trained and knowledgeable in what they're leading. And then good places, creating good feelings, are inclusive and welcoming, fun and fair, holistic, and safe. So kind of looking at all of that, that is what a quality program really looks like. Those are the components of it. So within your programs, I'm sure lots of you are already running really quality programs, but within the resource here, we have that infographic again, and then we also have a checklist that kind of goes along with it. So, what do each of these points really mean, and how can I maybe make sure that I'm meeting some of them, or, just tweak some of them that I'm already doing. The last part of the workshop is creating a vision for your program. And so maybe you can take some time to reflect on it now. But really this activity that we do within the workshop is about, thinking, okay, what is my vision for my program? Who is involved in the program? Who's going to help me get to where I want with my program? What are some of the resources that I need? What are some of the different supports that I need? What's already available that I could draw on? What might I need to start from scratch? So we ask people to kind of complete the canoe as they wish, thinking of the canoe as your program and who and what is going to help support you in your vision for your program. This is just a little summary slide. So I really like doing this with the participants in the workshop. And so if you ever do take the workshop now, this is you'll know what's coming. But this is just a summary of the things that I've talked about so far. So maybe as we go along, usually I get people to fill in the blanks as I say it, but you can just think about it and see if you match up with what I'm going to say. But we can create quality experiences in activity programs by making them fun, with purpose, everyone included and participant-centered, progressive and challenging, and always moving. And by doing this, we will help our participants develop their movement skills, confidence, motivation and enjoyment, which increases their physical literacy and helps them become, I can just hear people shouting out loud, helps them become active for life. So that really summarizes kind of all these areas that I've talked about today in this webinar. So thinking about those 5 principles of how we can create quality experiences. By doing that, we help develop our participants' skills, their motivation and enjoyment, and their confidence, which ultimately helps them become active for life in whatever form they may choose, whether that's, going for walks daily with family and friends, whether that's gardening, whether that's going hunting or fishing, whether that's playing sport, maybe at a recreational level or a high level. But by focusing on these different things and as program leaders, making sure our programs are kind of meeting those 5 principles, then we really can help our participants become active for life. Here are some key resources that I just wanted to share with you. And I know the question was there at the beginning around if the resource is available. Yes, it is. That's where you can get it. So that is our landing page, sportforlife.ca /Indigenous peoples. And so we have that resource on that landing page. There's also more information about the workshop on that landing page. And we have this other resource there as well. So this is the Aboriginal Long-Term Participant Development Pathway. So that is a resource and a workshop. This one, I would say, is more geared towards non-Indigenous leaders on how to be more inclusive and supportive of Indigenous participants within their programs. Again, this one was developed in collaboration with the Aboriginal Sports Circle, lots of input from the different Indigenous sport bodies across Canada. And really it's, how can we create that pathway to help our participants succeed throughout, all the way from what we call kind of cradle to grave. So everywhere from early childhood to, end of life. Some other resources that we have there. Another one of our websites is physicalliteracy.ca. So you can find more information about physical literacy there. Active for Life is another organization. They've got lots of great resources, as well as PHE Canada, which is Physical and Health Education Canada. They've got lots of good physical literacy resources as well. If you are interested in learning more about the resource or taking the workshop, please feel free to contact me. I've got my contact information on the next slide, or you can reach out to Jesse or Daniel, depending. I'm sure everyone's got different connections, or Michelle, and we can help try to bring and host a workshop within your community. I was just in Terrace 2 weekends ago, up there with Daniel and then some of the leaders up there, and that was fantastic. It was nice and sunny, and the mountains were shining with their snow. So we love kind of traveling around the province to deliver these workshops and connecting with people in person. We are also running these workshops across Canada since we are a national organization. So it's really nice to meet people from all over the country. We also have our Sport for Life mailing list, so sportforlife.ca /enews. So if you want any more information, not just about this resource and workshop, but any of the work that we're doing at Sport for Life, we send out monthly newsletters, so you can go to that website there and get yourself signed up. I know we're done a bit early. I didn't know how long that was going to take, but it was great to connect with everyone. Thank you for participating in the chat box. Did I miss anything? Oh, I think I did. I didn't realize it was going down. But now maybe we will take some time to answer any questions I might have missed. And thank you.
Can everyone kind of hear me if I just mooch off of Emily's mic here? Yep, sounds good. So I got a couple questions that I think we can address just at the end here. And then if anybody has any other questions that have arose over the course of the presentation here, please feel free to just chime in. There was a question earlier. Someone has adults and youth in their program and finds that quite challenging. And she didn't elaborate on whether that's sort of ability-wise or
Hmm.
just age groups in general, but do you have any feedback on how to address that?
Yeah, and I would say that that definitely can make it challenging, if you're working to develop certain skills. And even if we are working with youth, there's a lot of different skills even between ages, 6 to 12. So if we've got those different ages within a group, how do we kind of work with all different abilities? That's when I would say stations are really good. So, you have participants going through different stations. You got different activities with a lot of different options within each station. Another thing is a good thing to do is to pair up adults and youth. So if it's um, a run walk program, is there an opportunity? And again, I'm not sure of the ages here, but is there an opportunity to have the adults kind of mentor the youth as they go along? When we were in Terrace, one lady talked about, at the end of the workshop, she said, I actually now want to start up an elders program where elders are doing activities with the kids. So then they're not only getting the cultural teachings, but they're also, developing skills and they're getting some of the mentorship support. So I would say, at the end of the day, what I think about with even the activities and the practices that we run at Special Olympics, it all comes down to options. If you've got lots of different options for the activities that you're doing, you should be able to meet the needs and the abilities of both the youth and the adults.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We've got someone else saying that modifiable activities are awesome for inclusion as well.
Yeah.
Another question here is there a good way to get kids to engage in activities that you're trying to organize? Sometimes difficult to get them started on the activity.
Like in terms of, sorry, Kayla, do you mean in terms of when you say get them started, like they're not even engaged? Maybe she'll respond quickly.
Yeah, let's just type in there. Yeah, Mario's saying don't be afraid to do a basic skill.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes you might realize that you think your group is at an advanced skill level, and then you start to do it and you realize, oh no, we need to go back to the basics. And don't be afraid to do that. Go back to the basics because it's important that people are moving well and in the right way instead of challenging them so much that they're not going to be learning. Okay, so Kayla said yes, they don't seem to want to even start the activity. I think a lot of us can relate to that when we've got we've got programs with kids or with adults, and we've got those participants who just kind of stand on the side and you know don't really seem engaged. What I have found from my own personal experience and in talking to others as well is that being involved looks differently for each person. Some people are willing to get involved right away and they have no problems with that. Others need to watch and observe a bit before they feel comfortable engaging. So I would say don't give up and don't feel frustrated by those who sit on the sidelines. They might be engaged in their own way. Their brain is working, they're figuring it out. They're thinking, okay, is this something that I could get involved in? Do I know enough about it? They're asking themselves all those questions. Whereas, you might have other participants who they're just jumping in right away. Um, but I would say to kind of help facilitate that is to one, let them stand there. Don't force them into an activity because that's probably going to really either embarrass them or make them feel uncomfortable, and then they're probably not going to want to come back. But maybe just check in with them. So whether that's just standing beside them if they're on the sideline, so acknowledging their presence there. You don't even actually need to say anything, but you could also just check in, say, hey, it looks like you want to be involved, but do you have any concerns or do you not know how to do anything? You want me to help with anything? They might not say anything. They might give you specific feedback, but I would say stick with that participant. And because over time, you might see that slowly they jump in. The other thing you could do is maybe get them involved in different ways. So, hey, Jesse, do you want to help me pick up the cones after this activity? Or do you want to help me, set up this next activity? So then they're slowly starting to get their feet wet without feeling like they're going to be overwhelmed by jumping in right away.
Yeah, definitely. I would say too, I mean, Kayla, I've got less experience with kids as much as adults, but I think kind of having a bit of an icebreaker is a big help too. I
Mm-hmm.
know at a lot of the bigger events that we do something quite silly at the beginning, whether that's rock, paper, scissors evolution that we've played with Emily a number of times, or even using those animal cards that
Mm-hmm.
Emily shared, because then it's kind of breaking down a wall for everybody and everybody's kind of an equal playing field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think the other thing, important thing to remember as well is everyone's coming from different places. Everyone's had their own experiences. You might not know what's going on at home or within the community. So really just allowing space, that safe space for that participant to feel like they can engage in their own time.
So Esther's saying, how do you get a large group of kids to listen to the coach who is quiet and easygoing?
When I come into the gym, they listen, but as soon as I leave, they do what they want. Don't listen to him. He is new, so that could be an issue. Sorry, I'm going to read your question once more. How do you get a large group of kids to listen to the coach who is quiet and easygoing? When I come into the gym, they listen. So I'm guessing that you're not as quiet and that you can get the kids' attention. But as soon as you leave, they do what they want and they don't listen to him. So maybe another coach is in there. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I think so.
He isn't. So this other coach is new to the program, so that could be an issue. Yeah, that definitely could be an issue. And I mean, maybe part of that is just you kind of mentoring and whether that's having that conversation or just over time, he will see your approach to it and how the kids listen to you. I'm sure he sees how the kids change. If they're listening to you and then he steps in and they're not listening to him. Um, I'm sure he notices that. So maybe that's just a matter of him getting comfortable too. And the other part of, when we talk about physical literacy is developing our own confidence and motivation as leaders as well. So, some of us come off right away and we're great at delivering programs and engaging our participants. We're really confident. Others, even as a leader, we might be super passionate about our work, but we might not have you know, um, the strong skill set for it. So it's kind of our own professional development around it. So I would say it sounds like, yeah, it might be a matter of him getting used to being in that leader position.
I'm getting used to it, and I think some extra mentorship from you, Esther. If you've got a good relationship with the kids and they kind of respect your authority, like Emily was saying, I think he'll take a lot of notes from that.
Mm-hmm. Another good way, well, at least within our workshops. So Dorothy Paul, one of our facilitators, she's got a great little attention grabbing activity. She says she goes around when people are all loud and chatting and she's trying to get their attention. She says, she snaps her fingers. If you can hear me, snap your fingers. If you can hear me, snap your fingers. If you can hear me, snap your fingers. She goes around and eventually everyone's snapping by the end. And then she says, if your hands are snapping, your mouth's not flapping. And it works. And then she does it once. And then the next time she does it, she doesn't even have to say that line. She just does this, and everyone starts getting involved. That's fun for kids too.
Yeah.
That's fun for adults,
For sure.
but for kids as well, because then it's a bit of a rhyme. It's a bit of yeah, that's funny. So exactly, doing something like that where you can kind of get kids to focus, but in a fun and engaging way, not like a hey, listen to me, like what are you doing? Listen to me. It's more of a yeah, in a fun, supportive way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just another question that I tracked along the way, Tammy was asking when it's appropriate for kids to do a 10K.
When a 10, that is a bit of a technical question that I might have to get more information on for you because I would not know off the top of my head, but what I would need to know more about is how old specifically is the kid? And is this like a 10K walk or a 10K run, or what's I guess, more information around what that 10K would look like? Because 10K is a lot. Let's be honest. A lot of adults struggle to do a 10K, whether that's a walk or a run. So 10K for a kid, especially if it's a younger kid, where the stamina, endurance, and even the muscles to be able to go for a long time might not be there. But I would just want a bit of information, and then I'm happy to find out more answers for you.
And Tammy, I'm wondering too if you've got access to the ARW resource it is designed for adults, but could be a reference for youth as well, depending on, again, what the ages are there, I would say. A couple of people are just typing.
Esther says she claps the hands instead of snapping. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, Michelle was saying too, lots of structure and keeping them moving is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially working with our kids, we do need that structure.
Sorry,
We
everybody.
need to, yeah,
My legs are getting tired here. I'm just squatting down.
we've got a bit of a height difference here. But the structure really important, and also keeping the kids moving because then they're engaged, right? Like they're kids, they're still, figuring out their environment. They're all over the place. Their brains are all over the place. So if they're moving and you're giving them some instructions, then they might be able to take that in more, and also keeping those instructions really brief.
That's why the snapping or the clapping is great.
Yeah. Okay, did we miss any other questions as we just see some others typing? Modify.
Maybe just while a couple people are typing here too, I'll let everybody know that we will follow up the presentation here, and I'll share the slideshow that Emily used, as well as a link to the Active Communities resource and the physical literacy video. And then we'll also, we've been recording this webinar, and we will share it on the Healthy Living Hub. So we'll send everybody a link to that, and please feel free to share with your colleagues or other leaders.
They are twins. So Tammy just said they are twins, 11 years old, both involved in dance, track and field, dog walking, etc. This year was the first time they have done the Times Colonist 10K. One of them ran, walked, the other just walked. Do you know how that experience went for them, Tammy? It sounds like they've got a good kind of background in sport and physical activity. Okay, Mario, we did Boogie the Bridge in Kamloops, and we did the walk run program, and the kids chose what distance? Grade 4 to 7. The one who ran with her dad had sore, aching legs for a week. Again, developmentally, probably not there to be doing a long distance like that. And again, I can get you more information on what that appropriate timing really is. Kind of depends on, the participant's background, but there's also developmental stages that we should be working towards to make sure that, they're not doing anything that's going to really hurt their body in the long term or even the immediate term.
And even developmentally aside, a 10K, like you were saying, is a long distance for an adult. Like anybody who doesn't train really for a 10K, I think would be quite sore and achy. So we can also, if you don't have a time, I think you probably do have the ARW resource, but again, just preparing for that, at least that's out. And starting with a walk run for sure.
Because the last thing we want to do is push kids to do things too early on. They have a bad experience. Their legs are aching for a week, and they're like, I'm never doing that again. And then all of a sudden, running is out of all of the activities that they might enjoy participating in later on in life. So really, I think the focus, especially in the early years, is creating those really good experiences and opportunities to develop different movement skills, the confidence and the motivation and enjoyment, so that there's lots of different doors open for them in activities later on in life. And that also speaks to, multi-sport and avoiding early specialization in sport for children and youth. So it's important that, even if you're maybe a hockey person and you really want your kid to be in hockey, so you're putting them in and they're playing hockey all year round, they're playing on season and off season. It's important that they're playing other sports as well to develop other skills, because a lot of skills are transferable and will help them in the sport that they do want to go far in. And so that's just another thing. And we've got webinars on early specialization in sport that might be interesting for some of you. And again, if you go to our news list, you should be able to get more information about that. But just another thing to consider is that in the early years and the early ages, it's really about creating quality experiences so that these young children want to be active for life.
Yeah, so in the future, Tammy, I think with the girls, as Mario was saying, there's options for distances to choose in some runs, so that might be a better option for them for next year. But I think we will wrap things up if
Sure.
nobody else has any other questions. I really want to thank everybody so much for joining us, and especially thank Emily for coming
Thank
into the
you.
office. I think this was a refresher for a lot of people, and then maybe some new material for some of our return leaders. So I just hope this was a bit of an inspiration for the last few weeks of the programs, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of spring and gets outside and gets active with their groups.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And again, if you have any questions or maybe a week or two from now something pops up, feel free to contact me at any time. Thanks again for listening and good luck with the rest of your programs and happy start of spring summer.